Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm very excited to be here. As it was introduced already, my name is John Liu, the head of product for Amazon Web3 and blockchain services. And I'm very excited to talk to you today about the convergence of AI and Web3 and how these two technologies are going to push the innovation that we're already seeing when it comes to digital ownership, digital automation, and digital knowledge. Now, by now, you've already seen what generative AI can do, right? The lifelike dialogue that it can have, the amount of code that it can generate, the images that it can have, all through very simple text prompts. But what I'd like to do today is actually spend a little more time starting with what generative AI tech stack is, because this helps us understand how Web3 can utilize this technology to make it more powerful. And also, how Web3 can help this technology so generative AI itself can be more powerful. Now we start with the foundation models. So these are the large language models that are trained on billions of parameters, massive data sets like text, audio, video, images, and they give very powerful general knowledge. Now this general knowledge can be further fine-tuned and pre-trained on domain-specific data set so that they become areas of expertise. You adapt that general knowledge into these areas of expertise, and now you can power them up even more. However, it doesn't always make sense to train these models on incremental and dynamic data sets. This is where knowledge bases come in. And knowledge bases are used for retrieval augmented generation, or RAG workflows, so that you can bring in this model and augment your prompt to generate more accurate and relevant responses. Now, on top of this, you have the data integration layer. So this brings together all the data, the knowledge bases, also external data sets into one area, and where necessary, formats this information into vector representations so your generative AI models can consume it. All this knowledge is pretty good, but if you wanted to do something beyond just answering questions, you need agents. And agents themselves are not just bots. They're actually powered by large language models as well. So they have a remarkable sense of reasoning and solving problems. And we'll see an example of that later in this session. Finally, you can build the applications themselves. And you see chatbots and you see digital assistants, and these are just scratching the surface of what's possible. However, it's very important to remember throughout this entire tech stack the importance of security and privacy. And these components protect every single layer because it keeps the use of data safe. And there are also guardrails that are used to steer the large language models back on track when errors and unsafe content flagged by the customers themselves are detected. So as mentioned earlier already, Web3 and generative AI are complementary technologies that are going to have a significant impact in shaping the digital future. And over the last 2 decades, the digital economy has transformed how we all work, how we all share information, even how we live. And it's continuing to embrace new ways of automation and more efficient ways to operate at a global scale. Now, Web3 introduced a new framework, a decentralized framework to exchange data, value. And now, generative AI is democratizing digital knowledge. And it's also democratizing the ability to create digital content. Now, to better understand the impact of these two technologies together, what we'll do is look at some of the mainstream use cases that you're probably very familiar with already for Web3, and then we'll look at some of the mainstream use cases for generative AI first. Then we're going to look at the two combined and some use cases that these technologies can actually address. We'll start with payments. So payments with stablecoins is probably gaining the most real-world traction right now. $130 trillion market cap, settling billions of dollars daily, with major fintech and also traditional finance companies all increasing their service here. You may hear of like MasterCard, PayPal, Visa. They're all experiencing the economies of scale that blockchain has, with sub-second settlement times, transaction fees that are a fraction of a cent. When you compare this to the non-Web3 settlement times of 1 to 6 days, and also transaction fees of 1.5 to 3.5%, it's quite apparent why more and more companies are using stablecoins for payments. Web3 is also enhancing traditional finance. Now, digitally native assets like Bitcoin and Ether, they're opening up a completely new market opportunity for traditional finance. ETFs, custodial services, trading services. But traditional finances also bring in smart contracts into their workloads, even though a lot of this is still on permission private chains because of regulations. But one thing that's very visible on public chains, and one thing I hear about a lot here in Hong Kong, is asset tokenization as well, right? And tokenizing assets here is not just on private chains, as I said. It is visible on public blockchains with over $1 billion of treasuries and money market funds tokenized by the major financial institutions in the US, including Franklin Templeton and most recently, BlackRock. Right? And these are going to push more and more adoption into this space. So moving beyond financial services, we have engagement tokens. And Web3 allows major brands to basically collaborate more easily with other brands and also create digital experiences for their consumers. But one important point to draw here is the ability for these brands to reconnect with the end consumer in an age where first-party consumer data is getting harder to get. Like cookies are disappearing. So if I give you an example, Mattel. Everybody knows Mattel, Hot Wheels, Barbie, right? Great toys. Now what they do today when they sell their toys through a distributor, they actually often don't know who's buying it on the other end. They don't know how to connect with that consumer. But with Web3, what they can do now is connect and encourage the person who bought that physical toy, let's say it's a Hot Wheel car, encourage them to log in with their Mattel sign-on and download a Web3 digital NFT. And now they've instantly reconnected with that customer, and they're instantly able to tailor more experiences for that customer. Wrapping up the Web3 use cases, we have gaming, which is predicted to be worth, in a recent survey, $133 billion by 2033. And the space has evolved a lot beyond the initial play-to-earn iteration and is now finding the right value of what's off-chain, what's on-chain, what's the right tokenomics to have, and also prioritizing the right gameplay. And this you can see in Web3 native games like Shrapnel and Pixel, that's just to name a few. I'm sure there's so many more. And also, you're seeing traditional gaming companies and also software makers come into the space like Ubisoft, Square Enix, and Sega. Now let's take a look at the generative AI use cases. And some of these use cases were already possible without generative AI. Generative AI just enhances them. Others are only possible because of generative AI. And we start with use cases that impact the end customer, so it's going to be your customers. And one of the big things that they do with digital assistants, chatbots, and hyper-personalization is they reimagine the way your customers can engage with your projects. Generative AI can also improve your employee productivity. When it comes to text summarization, Word document generation, this is improving the workflow of the knowledge worker 10 times, 100 times. And I can tell you, coming from AWS, which is a very doc-centric culture, it's improved my productivity many, many times. Creativity, content, and generation is arguably a new category that's only enabled by generative AI. Not because people didn't know how to create art and music before it, but because at the velocity and ease that generative AI has brought to this industry. The creativity can now leverage these tools. You don't have to learn complex modeling language, programming languages. You enter in text prompt, and you've got wonderful images ready to go. Finally, generative AI can improve your document processing, your business processing, as well as improve the data that you're handling with. Generative AI can create synthetic data so that you can stress test your KYC algorithms, for example, or you can go and optimize your business processes with this synthetic data. And these are just a few of the things that people are building across the industries with those use cases I just discovered. And it's a lot to go over there. So what I recommend is to focus on the financial services, the retail, and also the media and entertainment categories, because those are the areas that have the most overlap with what Web3 can actually do with generative AI. So, how can generative AI help with Web3? We're going to start with 3 examples or use cases that focus on generative AI transforming the experience for your customers. This starts with improving your UX onboarding. The technology for onboarding mainstream users has gotten much better, but the knowledge required, all these components that you're going to use, is still very complex for the everyday person, and those digital assistants can abstract that all away. Second, generating content, as I mentioned. All those consumer engagement platforms with customized NFTs or Web3 games with customized NFTs, you can use generative AI to create that easily. And you can also use generative AI to have lifelike dialogue for your NPC characters so your Web3 games are more immersive. Right? Third, increasing personalization. And we're not just talking about personalization with what you can see, but also personalization for the projects that your customers might care about. You have all these staking pools. You have all these restaking projects. Which one would they be interested in? Well, your end customer can just submit 1 or 2 projects, and generative AI does a very good job of recommending that to your end customer. Now, next 3 use cases we're going to look at improve the technology and back-end processes of Web3. And we start with enhancing the intelligence. With all that on-chain and off-chain data available, generative AI can pull it all together to create credit scores, for example, improve your KYC algorithms, and importantly, it can go through reams of regulatory updates that are hard for everyone to read, and maybe highlight the trends that you as a builder should be aware about. Second, generative AI can be used to augment your smart contract automation. So there's already automation with the smart contracts. Can DeFi bots, trading bots, liquidity bots make it easier, more efficient? And the answer is yes, we're starting to see that happen. Third, and this is probably one of the most important areas, and we're seeing this across all development, which is strengthening your development through developing copilots and also stress testing the smart contracts continuously so that you make it more robust. Increasing the effect of your documentation so it's better for other people to build with. So this is how generative AI helps Web3. But can Web3 help generative AI? Absolutely. We're going to look at 3 where the Web3 can help with its distributed ledger, its immutable ledger that everyone can see. And we start with the obvious, being able to bring authenticity and trust to the massive amount of digital content that's being generated with generative AI today. In the non-Web3 world, they use watermarks. That's pretty effective, but watermarks can still be sometimes tampered with. So why not supplement that with non-fungible tokens, whose specialty is to trace authentic digital assets? Second, data provenance. There's so much data being used to train these models. Data provenance allows you to track what incoming data was used, what parameters were used to actually help that model reach an end conclusion. And this is important for 2 reasons. Because number 1, it's important for model explainability, as I just mentioned. But number 2, it's also important for data copyright issues. And we're already seeing big companies solving this problem in this space. For example, Fox, the media company, the US media company, they built a solution, Verify, on the Polygon blockchain specifically to address these 2 use cases. Finally, very related to data provenance in a way, is proving your model integrity. Models change all the time. All these different versions are coming out. So with blockchain, what you can do is prove that a model used to train one data set was the same version used to train on another data set, so you can actually trust the result that came out of it. Now, the next week we're going to talk about leverage Web3's ability to decentralize things and also introduce new incentive mechanisms. And we start with decentralizing AI. Now, decentralizing AI has the same benefits for the entire generative AI industry as decentralizing finance has for financial industries, right? You bring in more transparency, more trust into the space, but it also has an open platform so that all the builders can use these models and push the innovation of what the models can do. And importantly, the models themselves can connect with other models and use each other, so you have this network effect. Also, being able to provide training data for your models. Models love data, but as we're going to cover a few times in here, in order to make generative AI very specific and deliver more impactful value, you need private proprietary data to drive. And what generative AI does, it creates an opportunity for the everyday person to share, sell, rent that private data. DeepIn, the final one comes to DeepIn, right? This is a perfect fit. Distributing computing. Computing takes resources, and there are sometimes shortages in GPU, shortages in storage. And DeepIn does a pretty good job of filling that void by bringing spare capacity to make it available for the everyday user, smaller companies as well. So there's a few considerations that I like to review as you're thinking of building Web3 solutions that maximize their impact for generative AI. And this is going to be very familiar to all of you, but we're going to start with interoperability, right? In this case, interoperability, we're not talking about blockchain interoperability, we're talking about model and agent interoperability. All these models and agents, they have standards. They have ways that they want to communicate with each other. So don't build a proprietary way of communicating and sharing this information, or else you're creating a silo. Second, privacy and security. These three things that you see here on the board are pretty much table stakes if you want to engage enterprise customers or the mainstream use cases. I've been in many institutional conversations where if these are not available, they said it doesn't matter how good the solution is, how advanced the model is, they just can't use it. And finally, specific to Web3, just remember monetization, right? Think long term when it comes to how you want to engage all the different stakeholders in your system. This is one of the most challenging things to get Web3 adapted in the mainstream use cases. Now we're going to take a look into an example. And there were so many examples to choose from when I was putting this together. But I chose one that keeps coming to mind at almost every Web3 industry I've been to. They're always saying, I want to onboard the next billion users. So why don't we start with doing something that will help with that? We'll start with this hypothetical DGen Kite project. It doesn't exist out there, so please don't go try to find it. It's a hypothetical AI Web3 project that's offering DGen Kite points. Right? And these points will qualify their end user for a reward. It could be future token drops, provided that their end user stakes ETH. It could be liquid staking or it could be restaking. So that's a common mechanism we see today. Now, on a typical user, what do they have to do to go through this? Oh, they have to go through and learn about the DGen Kite project on social media. I recommend that they do some due diligence, right, to see what's actually happening with this project in Discord and Telegram. They have to absorb that message. They have to learn about all the ETH staking and restaking projects as well. Then they have to deposit their ETH into the right DGen staking pool, the ETH restaking pool, come back to the DGen Kite project, and then deposit their liquid staking ETH or restaking ETH into the right DGen Kite pool, and finally they get to earn those points. Now, even for an advanced user, this is still full of risk because there are different websites that you have to go to. So you might end up going to one that's a phishing website, so you have to double check that. You might be depositing your token into the wrong smart contract, the wrong project, so then you don't qualify for the rewards. And if you have to put this thing through a mainstream user, forget it. It's too complicated, right? They can't do this. But can we replace this experience with something simpler? So the Web3 technology over the last 2 years, with account abstraction, with the ability to create wallets with seamless sign-on, a single sign-on, has made it much easier for a mainstream user to come and use this technology. But as you saw before, the knowledge required to use and get deep into Web3 is still very difficult. So if we can abstract that complexity away with a digital staking assistant that is armed with the power and reasoning of large language models, and also has the most up-to-date information from knowledge bases of all the staking programs that are live, all the how-to guides that have been written, all the answers that are being given right now in the moderating forums, and also has the ability to take action on behalf of the user, such as maybe depositing some of those tokens into the staking pool, then that whole experience can be replaced with a handheld onboarding, where this DGen Kite staking assistant actually answers the question of the user and guides that user step by step through the process, all from the same UI. So this isn't just fiction, this actually works today. And what actually happens behind the scenes when this agent, this digital kite staking assistant gets the question, it actually is smart enough to figure out how to handle the problem. And it does this through managing prompts. And the prompts are actually configured by engineers or builders, and it takes into context all the conversation history, all the knowledge base and actions available to the agent, as well as instructions that tell the agent how to behave and also consume information, format information, and also the task itself. It sends this to the large language model, which goes through this chain of thought, which thinks of a plan and comes up with these steps. And these steps could be, I need to take an action, which is I need to open the wallet and actually check what balance of information is on there. And then I need to check the knowledge base so I know what I can do with those tokens, what staking pools are active. And it passes this result back to the agent itself. And the agent's constantly thinking, do I have enough information to actually solve the problem? Or do I need to ask people more, the consumer more, for information and just go through this cycle over and over again until finally it has enough information to complete the tasks. It passes this back into the large language model and generates the final response back to that user. So in that example we gave, can you help me stake more effectively? What the staking assistant will actually do is say, yes, I actually can do this. The first thing I'll need to do is check your wallet. So it asks for permission from the user to open that wallet. User is kind of guided through this step. And then once the staking assistant sees the assets, it checks the knowledge base and says, great, which one of these staking pools can you participate in? And then starts guiding the user through each of these steps, all from that single UI. So you can imagine the power of this staking assistant when you pair it with something like frames from Farcaster, right? So how can AWS help you in this journey? Now, AWS has been democratizing machine learning for over 100,000 customers of all industries, of all sizes. And we also work with Web3 customers of all kind, from the big enterprise customers that are building Web 2.5 workflows to the Web3 startups that are pushing the innovation of what's possible with blockchain. So we get a lot of pain points that we hear from customers, and it allows us to build good solutions to help everyone. And when it comes to generative AI, Amazon Bedrock is the easiest way to build generative AI applications with foundation models. It's a fully managed service that allows you to select from a range of models and provides you with a set of tools, such as knowledge bases and agents, so that you can complete the complex tasks. And you can do this all with the scalability, the security, the privacy, and responsible AI safety required to launch your generative AI application. Now, just like in Web3, there's no single blockchain to rule them all. When it comes to generative AI, there's no single model to rule them all. Everything's happening rapidly. New models are getting released almost daily. It is very similar to how Web3 is evolving. So at times like this, what customers have asked us for is the ability to easily work with a wide range of models so that they can select from them, build with them, combine them. And so that they're prepared for the best that comes tomorrow, even as they're armed with the best model that's available today. That's why Amazon Bedrock makes working with these range models as simple as one single API call. We support a host of these models, including Anthropic's latest Cloud 3 models, which are some of the smartest, most intelligent, most cost-efficient, fastest models in the market today, along with public models like Mistral AI, or models that are focused on image generation, like Stability AI's family. And each of these models can be supercharged with your data so you can turn generic applications into generative AI applications that know your particular project, know your particular users, so they're delivering specific value to you. But as mentioned, it doesn't make sense to always retrain an entire model as you're serving questions, right? It's expensive and there are some risks with retraining models, which is where knowledge bases come in. To equip your foundation models with this dynamic data, you can store this information into a knowledge base and use them in the RAG, retrieval augmented generation workflows, and enrich the prompts so that you can generate more relevant responses. And knowledge bases for Amazon Bedrock is a fully managed RAG capability that takes care of the ingestion, the retrieval, the prompt augmentation, and even session management comes built in. So you can take care of multi-turn conversations. And any information that's pulled from the knowledge bases comes with citations. And this improves transparency and, importantly, reduces hallucinations in your model. Now, foundation models are great at answering questions, generating content, but as we've mentioned, in order for you to do something, you need agents. And Amazon Bedrock helps with that as well. Using Amazon Bedrock, you can create agents with just a few clicks. You select your model, you actually give it some instructions on how to behave, you select your data sources, which include your knowledge bases, and then you configure the actions through Lambda. And you can do this all securely and privately through AWS, and you don't have to do any advanced prompt engineering unless you want to. You can customize that if you want to too. And all the agents for Amazon Bedrock come with chain of thought visibility, so you can trace through how your agent is thinking about the problem and make configurations in your instructions or prompts so that it's able to get better responses. Now let's look at how AWS helps you with your Web3 journey. And there are various ways that AWS helps, starting with DIY solutions that take advantage of AWS's compute and storage capabilities. For example, node runners. With a single click, you can create well-configured self-managed nodes on AWS. You can also use third-party solutions that if you're looking for something that's more out of the box and you just want to get started sooner. Or you can use fully managed services that give you the flexibility to build without any of the undifferentiated lift. An Amazon Managed Blockchain is a fully managed infrastructure service for nodes and also provides you the critical familiar data that you need through single API calls. Amazon Managed Blockchain Access is a fully managed node infrastructure and it currently supports Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Polygon in public preview. So the Polygon service is actually free of charge to use if you're a builder there. AMB Query, or Amazon Managed Blockchain Query, delivers the critical data that you need for wallets or DeFi protocols, such as balances and transactions, and the full real-time all the way to the history from beginning, so you don't have to run archive nodes. And it delivers all of this, again, through simple API calls. So hopefully, what we've covered today are both the use cases that are available to you about how Web3 and generative AI are coming together, the importance of this decentralized exchange of information and value, and the democratization of that knowledge to power the decentralization, and vice versa. So with that, thank you very much for your attention, and I can't wait to look at what you're all going to build.